Welcome back to another Giant Monsters Monday, and today we are taking a look at the NECA Pacific Rim Series 3, the Kaiju section of that series, and this is Battle Damage Knifehead and Trespasser. And since I was already doing the Giant Monster Mondays, I figured this was an appropriate way to hit both these figures. They both pretty much share the same body, so it'll be a kind of easy review to do them as one thing, but these are two really cool kaiju, and though we've already got Knifehead, I will show you in just a minute how different this figure is, and using that same body with some minor tweaks to create the Trespasser is really cool. I've been looking forward to this wave with great anticipation. For those of you that don't know the story, the original wave of Pacific Rim figures from NECA was developed with Walmart actually expressing interest in carrying the line, but because of that, NECA had to tone down some of the things that they would have loved to do to keep it at a certain price point that Walmart was comfortable with. Unfortunately, Walmart dropped out of this, but the figures were already in heavy development, so NECA couldn't backpedal on any of it and make them the way they wanted to. Going forward, they said that everything's going to be done their way. Series 2 was a noticeable upgrade to Series 1, and that was maybe about half of the way there to where they wanted to be with this line if they were doing it from scratch the way they would normally do it. So that was still a little bit of that Walmart recovery. Wave 3 and on, we are in pure NECA territory, the way things should have been done, the way they would have had it done, and you know what? I'm psyched for it. I've loved this line so far, and totally down to get some cool stuff in the future. So let's get right into these guys. And here we have the original Knifehead, the Series 1 Knifehead. And that is Series 3. This thing is so much bigger, so much meaner, so much better painted than his original figure. It's crazy. It is just absurd how much more stuff got crammed into this thing. So let's throw this original one aside, maybe never to be seen again, and take a look at this new and improved Knifehead. And kudos right off the bat to NECA for not making us feel like we were being completely cheated on this and just getting a redo of a figure we already had. This does have some good battle damage quality to it. We can see all the Kaiju blue going all through this section of the body, even in the mouth as well, which is something I'd pointed out in my original review that I didn't really like about the first release, is that the mouth didn't have that glowing blue effect. One thing I really love with this figure is if you look at the skin, the texture is very well detailed. Every bit of it's covered in this scaly, leathery look, which is just great. The shape of the head is the same as it was before, very movie accurate. He's got the main eyes up here and the two little eyes going back. They are much better detailed this time, but they still don't really have the pupils in them. But they are so small, it's really hard to tell. And at least this time they look like eyes and not rogue dots of paint. Up here up top, we've got kind of his blowhole, little nostrils up on the top of his head. They are painted a nice Kaiju blue as well. And then taking a look inside the mouth, we can see the fleshy blue in there, the tongue, which is almost translucent looking. I don't know if it is or not, but it's very cool looking. And the big sharp goblin shark teeth. And you can even see in there, he actually has like a double row of teeth, kind of like the 90s Godzilla, which I really dig. On this side, the battle damage effect is limited to just around the jaw and also on the tip of his knife up there. One gripe I do have is the jaw is articulated. It won't close all the way because of that tongue still, which is a problem from the first release. I really do wish the tongue would come out a la the Marvel Select Venom. But also, when you close the mouth and you look at it from a low angle, you can see the inside of the mouth painted right there on the bottom. So depending on the angle you're trying to get with this figure, you kind of have to have the mouth open to keep the effect going. For a low angle shot of this thing is gonna look a little goofy with the mouth closed. Now up here in the upper part of his neck, this is a separate piece on the body. It's not detachable, but you could definitely see a clear seam in it. And what I believe they did is they took the body they were using for Trespasser and just added this larger neck extension onto it. It's not really that detracting from the look of it, especially on the battle damage side. It looks like it flows a lot better together because of that paint unifying it. But just know that there is a bit of a seam there. The chest has a lot of great detail in it, both in the muscles and the scales. With the arms here, it has the bioluminescent orange stripes going all through them, looking very, very cool. I love the two-tone they did on this battle damage blue. I really am just digging the battle damage on this thing. Just like Gypsy Danger that I preferred with the battle damage, this just looks awesome. We of course have his big outer arms with the gap in here with the bones, the big claw, and the claw even has some paint detailing in it as well, giving it a little bit of a dry brushing wash effect so that it doesn't look like just flat skin tone, which is great. On the back, we have that big kind of weird thing on him. I don't really know what this is. I thought in the movie it would be a plot point, honestly, when I first saw the design. I thought this was some kind of control mechanism that maybe the invaders were using to control the kaiju, but not all of them have it. But it does kind of look separate from the rest of the body. I just don't know, but it's got the big horns coming off the front. Very cool texture on it, very good dry brushing effect. Really dig it, though it does stick up a little bit more than I'd want it to off the back. It looks like it's not glued down all the way. I could fix that if I wanted to, but it's not that detracting. Going down to the legs, we have this big spiny alligator armor up here on the top. Very cool, great texture going all through. More of the bioluminescent look going, and then some really nice kaiju toes down there. And then of course his big spade tail. Very nice. For articulation, we already talked about how the jaw moves. The head will rotate side to side just a little bit. I do believe this is on a ball joint, but the added bulk around the neck keeps it from really doing any up and down or any motion like that. But you can feel that it seems like it wants to have that motion there. The main arms have a pin and socket joint, so you can go out to the side fairly far, forward and backwards. The most disappointing joint on this whole figure is the elbow. It just doesn't bend as far as I'd like it to inwards. You would have had to mess with the sculpt a lot to get it to work, but it just kind of bums me out that he can't bend very far at all. I don't even know if that's 45 degrees off of the straight axis, because the arm could bend a little further backwards than it should naturally be allowed to, but I guess we should go in a little further. You can also rotate at the elbow, and the hand is on a nice ball joint, so you could swivel it all the way around and move it up and down just a little bit. The inner arms actually surprised me. I thought they'd be on ball joints, but they are on pin and socket joints, so they will swivel in and out as well as rotate. Pretty good range of motion on those. And then we also have a ball joint at the claw, so it will rotate and do a little up and down just like the main hands. We have a rotation at the waist, and it can also kind of go a little forward and back. I think this might also be a ball joint as well, but there's no range there just because of the sculpt, so we're not going to mess with that too much. I believe this joint at the hip may actually be a ball joint. We can go forward and back, out to the side just a little bit, kind of swivel it up in there. Can bend at the knee as well as rotate, and then a ball joint at the foot, which is great for stabilizing this figure. And then of course the tail is on a bendy wire, so you can pose it any which way you feel like. And as I said, Trespasser is a lot of the same design. Of course, we get a totally fresh head sculpt. I love the look of this blade, this axe head he's got going on. Very cool looking, very sharp looking. Now I've seen some photos of people's online that looked fairly warped. Mine looks fairly straight, not perfect, but fairly straight. But something to keep note of when you're looking at the figure. The eyes are really well done in there. They kind of just have this creepy, leering look to them, especially with the jaw with the big exposed teeth. His jaw will open as well. You can see the orange inside as well as the red tongue sticking out. He closes his mouth a lot better than Knifehead does, but the jaw is a little loose on mine. As I mentioned with Knifehead, the neck is a little more open on this one, a little smaller, less bulky. The shelf up here on his chest is also a little more smooth with the rest of his body. It's not kind of as jagged and pronounced. The backpack, very similar, but it does also continue that axe shape, which is really neat looking. I really love the look of that. Very, very cool. The bioluminescence on him is virtually the same color, but we do kind of get this brown paint taken in the middle, which is good looking. There's also some like greenish dry brushing and yellow up here on the blade, which is really nice. I do have a little slop in a couple of places from the bioluminescent. You can see it's here on the jaw where it shouldn't be. And also I have a little smudge down here on the leg, but nothing horrible. The waist down, he is pretty much identical to Knifehead, including the tail. The articulation is also pretty much identical. The only difference is you get a lot better movement with Trespasser's head. You can actually utilize that ball joint. You can go up and down, side to side, turn it. Much better, and in my mind, really helps posing this figure out a lot. So here is Trespasser next to his fellow kaiju, Leatherback, and you can see that I thought Leatherback was huge when he first came out, but Trespasser is dwarfing him. And you can also see a quality increase in the paint on this guy. Now this is a deluxe line. It costs a little more than the previous figures. The previous price is going to continue on with the Jaegers, but the kaiju are going to be a little more expensive just to justify the freaking awesomeness and hugeness of them. But the paint quality on Trespasser looks really superior to Leatherback, and I loved Leatherback, so you pretty much see where this is going. And then here's Knifehead next to our battle damaged Gypsy Danger, and you can see how daunting of a fight this would have been. The previous Knifehead was towered over by Gypsy, and it looked like an easy fight. This matchup looks like you'd be pooping in your con pod fighting this thing. Holy cow. Now, NECA has announced they are doing a redo on the Gypsy Danger figure, beefing up the articulation and making it more in tune with this new direction of the line. The designs for the new Gypsy Danger have him standing slightly taller. It's going to be a slightly larger figure than this one, but still, massive size difference here, and I'm really excited to have these up on a shelf together. So those are our two new Kaiju from Series 3, and if you couldn't tell by my overall enthusiasm with the rest of this video, these guys both get the cult classic status, the recommend, all the good stuff. Love these figures. The only thing I have that I really am not thrilled about is the outer arm elbow joint articulation. I wish that would move a bit further, but everything else on these figures I think is great. Definitely highly recommend these figures. If you see them in stores, snag them, because from my experience with the previous two lines, they hit, people buy them, and they don't really ever seem to show up again in stores. So if you want them, pounce when you can, because these things have been hot sellers so far, and hopefully that continues on with this line. For the future, NECA hasn't really shown us anything yet. I mentioned they are doing a redo on Gypsy Danger. They've shown some schematics for it, of where the articulation's gonna be, all that cool stuff. Looks like it's gonna come with some great accessories if they get it done. They'll probably do a normal and battle damage at least. So we know we have that coming in the future. They have also announced they are going to be doing a Scunner, which is a Kaiju that shares this basic body style, has a couple differences to it that they would sculpt in there, but very, very similar. It's one of the Category 4s from the very end of the film. But beyond that, we don't really know what's coming in the future waves. I'm glad it seems that NECA will continue to push forward Pacific Rim. It seems like it's been pretty successful for them, which is great because the movie wasn't that successful, and this seems like it's actually doing really well as a figure line, and it's actually hitting the fans that it needs to hit. I hope that since the Kaiju are now a deluxe line and a kind of separate line from the rest of it, that maybe they can create some of the ones they previously stated that would be hard to do because of price point. Specifically, Otachi, they had mentioned, would be really hard to do the way they were doing it, and I would love to get both versions of Otachi, both with the wings and without. Also, really, especially because we're getting Coyote Tango later on in this wave, I'd really like to get the Onibaba figure. I think that would be a really cool one. Very different looking Kaiju, although you can't really do much with its body beyond that one mold, so we never know. I'd love to get the Karloff one that was seen mostly in the comics and briefly in the introduction. I really like the design on that one as well as the rest of the ones seen in the film. Raiju and Slantern definitely would be good ones to get. Maybe the Blade Head or whatever it was that attacked Sydney. My list could go on. I want everything. I think you're pretty much aware of that now. I'd love to see this line go as deep as the Predator line or the Alien line is going to. And I hope the line continues to do well so we can get more and more, because I love my giant monsters. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been another Giant Monsters Monday. Sayonara.